The city was quiet, resting under the soft glow of streetlights as night slowly took over. Most of the offices in the tall buildings had already turned off their lights, but one building still showed signs of life. It belonged to Adrian Hale, a man known across the world for his success, his intelligence, and his hard work. People called him one of the richest men in the country, but he often felt like the loneliest as well. His office was on the top floor, with tall windows that looked over the whole city. Adrian sat behind his desk, reading documents that had been waiting for his signature all day. He worked late most nights, telling himself it was for the good of the company, but deep down he knew it was because the silence of his large penthouse felt heavier than the noise of his busy building. When the clock showed midnight, he decided to leave. He gathered his things, switched off the last light, and stepped into the elevator. The ride down was long and silent, as it always was at that hour. When he stepped outside, the cold breeze touched his face, gently pushing him toward his waiting car. His driver stood beside the door, ready to open it for him. Just as Adrian was about to enter the car, something caught his eye. It was small, curled up near the entrance of the building, partly hidden by a column. At first, he thought it was just someone taking shelter from the cold, which was not unusual in the city. But when he stepped closer, he saw it was a girl. A very young girl. She looked around 14 or 15, dressed in clothes that were worn and torn at the sleeves. Her hair was messy, her shoes looked too old to keep out the cold, and she hugged her knees tightly, as if trying to keep herself warm. She wasn't moving much, only her shoulders rose and fell gently as she slept. Adrian stopped walking. Something inside him shifted, something he had not felt in years. It was the quiet reminder of a time when he had nothing, when he slept behind old buildings and took warmth from walls that blocked the wind. He knelt down slowly. He didn't want to wake her by accident. He only wanted to understand why a girl so young was sleeping alone in the cold night. Her face, though tired and pale, looked peaceful in her sleep. There was something delicate about her, something that made her look like someone who had carried too many burdens for her age. A passing car illuminated them briefly, and Adrian saw a bruise on her arm. It was light, but clearly fresh. His jaw tightened slightly, but he forced himself to breathe calmly. He knew he needed to help her. The city could be harsh, especially at night, and leaving her outside did not sit right with him. He turned to his driver and asked for a warm blanket from the car. The driver moved quickly and returned with one. Adrian placed the blanket gently around the girl, hoping it would give her a little warmth. As he adjusted it, she moved slightly and her eyes slowly opened. She looked up at him, confused for a moment, then scared. She backed up a little, hugging herself again. Adrian raised his hand in a calm gesture, letting her know he meant no harm. His voice was soft and steady as he spoke to her, making sure she felt safe. She stared at him for a long moment. Her breathing slowly eased, and the fear in her eyes softened. She looked around as if trying to remember where she was. Her voice finally came out in a quiet, tired tone. It was shaky, but honest. And the words she spoke were simple, pure, and heavy enough to touch something deep inside Adrian. Those words were the beginning of everything that would follow. They would open a door to emotions he had locked away and lead him into a journey he was not expecting. The girl sitting in front of him had no idea that her simple truth would change the life of one of the richest men in the country. And Adrian had no idea that she was about to change his life as well. Adrian waited patiently as the girl slowly adjusted the blanket around her shoulders. Her small hands pulled the fabric closer to her chest, holding onto the warmth as if it were something precious. The cold wind brushed past them, but she seemed a little safer now, even if only by a little. Her eyes lifted again, and she finally spoke. She said she was not trying to cause trouble. She said she was only trying to stay near the lights because they made her feel less afraid. She said she had been walking for hours and her legs could not carry her anymore. Her quiet voice carried so much exhaustion that Adrian felt something tighten in his chest. She told him her name was Lena. She said she had nowhere else to go. The way she said it was not dramatic, not loud, not begging. It was simple truth, spoken by someone who had learned to accept pain without expecting help. That was the part that hit him the most. It reminded him of his own past, of the nights he spent sleeping behind old buildings with nothing but hope to keep him moving. Adrian lowered himself to sit beside her, even though the cold pavement pressed through his expensive suit. He did not care. He wanted her to feel like she wasn't alone. He listened to every word she shared. Lena spoke slowly, as if each sentence required effort. She told him she had been moving from place to place, trying to stay safe. She had been searching for somewhere she could rest without being chased away. There was a softness in her voice that made her story even heavier. She did not complain. She did not blame anyone. She spoke as if she believed this was simply the life she was meant to live. That quiet acceptance stirred something deep inside Adrian, something he had buried under years of success, money, and responsibility. He gently asked her if she had eaten. She shook her head. Her hands were trembling slightly, whether from hunger or cold he could not tell. The sight made Adrian feel a strong urge to protect her. He called his driver and instructed him to bring a warm meal from the emergency supplies kept in the car. The driver returned with a thermos of soup and a small container of bread. Lena hesitated at first, but he nodded reassuringly. She opened the container and began to eat slowly, as if she didn't want to finish it too quickly. Every bite seemed to bring a bit of color back into her pale face. Adrian watched her quietly, feeling something unusual. It was a sense of responsibility mixed with a memory of who he used to be. As she ate, he told her his name. He did not tell her he was a billionaire. He did not tell her he owned the building she was sleeping beside. He only said his name was Adrian. She repeated it softly, almost shyly, and gave a small nod. A silence fell between them, but it was a calm silence. The kind that forms when two people unexpectedly understand each other. Lena finished her food and held the empty container gently, as if afraid to drop it. She thanked him in the quietest voice, and Adrian could hear the sincerity in it. He looked at the street, at the empty sidewalks, at the quiet buildings. He thought about walking away and letting her continue her night alone. But his heart refused the idea. The thought of leaving her in the cold made something inside him feel wrong. He stood up and held out his hand to her. She stared at it, unsure. Adrian kept it steady, letting her take the time she needed. Finally, she reached out and held his hand. Her fingers were cold and fragile. Adrian helped her stand, and she looked up at him with cautious eyes. He told her she could come inside the lobby for the night. It was warm and safe. She hesitated, but the cold air pushed her forward. She followed him into the building, walking slowly, almost uncertain if she was allowed to step inside such a place. The moment she entered, her eyes widened at the clean floors, the warm lights, and the quiet space. She looked small in the giant lobby, but she looked safe. Adrian guided her to a soft chair where she could rest. She curled into it as if it were the most comfortable place she had ever seen. As he watched her, a thought formed in his mind, clear and steady. Her presence was not an accident. She had come into his path for a reason. And he knew he could not turn away now. That night would mark the beginning of a journey neither of them expected. The night passed slowly but gently. For the first time in a long while, Lena slept peacefully. The warm lobby kept away the cold, and the chair supported her small body as she curled under the blanket Adrian had given her. She barely moved, except for the soft rise and fall of her breathing. Adrian sat on a nearby couch, unable to leave. Something kept him there. He watched over her the way one watches over something precious and fragile. Even though he was a man with 1,000 responsibilities, he pushed them aside for the night. He felt a strange sense of calm just sitting there, knowing she was safe. As dawn approached, light filtered softly through the tall glass doors. The city began to wake. A few early workers arrived and saw their boss sitting quietly in the lobby. None dared to speak or interrupt him. They only nodded respectfully and continued inside their offices. Lena opened her eyes slowly. She lifted her head and looked around as if trying to understand where she was. She saw the warm lights and the clean floor. She saw the blanket around her. Then she saw Adrian, sitting calmly with a gentle expression on his face. She slowly sat up. Her hair fell over her shoulders, and she tucked it behind her ear. Her eyes held a softness mixed with surprise. She looked healthier than the night before, even with her tired features. Adrian stood up and walked toward her. His voice was calm, steady, and warm. He asked her how she felt. She nodded and whispered that she felt better. She looked down at her hands and held the blanket tightly. Then she said something that touched him deeply. She thanked him in a voice filled with emotion he could feel even from across the room. Her gratitude was genuine, simple, and pure. She said no one had shown her that kind of kindness in a long time. Her words struck Adrian quietly but powerfully. He felt something shift inside him, something he had not felt in many years. It was a sense of purpose that went beyond business, money, or success. It was a reminder of the person he once hoped to be. He offered her breakfast, and they ate together in the small corner of the lobby where sunlight was touching the floor. She ate slowly, trying to hide her hunger out of manners, and Adrian made sure she had enough. They talked softly, carefully, like two people learning to trust again. Lena spoke a little more about her life. She had been moving from place to place after losing the last person who cared for her. She had no home. She had no one waiting for her. She had been surviving completely on her own. Her words stayed gentle, but each one felt heavy. She was not asking for anything. She was simply sharing the truth she had carried for too long. Adrian listened with quiet focus. Every detail made him more certain of what he needed to do. When breakfast was over, he told her she did not have to return to the streets. He told her she could stay safely under his care until she found her strength again. He said it calmly, without pressure, without expectation. Lena looked at him with wide, unsure eyes. Her lip trembled slightly, as if his kindness was too much for her to understand all at once. But slowly, hope began to appear in her expression. She nodded, very gently, and whispered that she would be grateful. At that moment, Adrian felt something inside him settle peacefully. He knew he had made the right choice. He knew their paths were meant to cross. He knew she would never sleep in the cold again. He called his staff privately and arranged a small guest room on a lower floor. Nothing too grand, but clean, warm, and safe. Lena walked inside the room with awe in her eyes. She touched the bed softly, feeling its warmth as if she had stepped into another world. Adrian watched her carefully. Her smile, small and shy, was the most genuine thing he had seen in a long time. He realized her presence was healing something in him he did not know was still broken. That morning marked the beginning of a new chapter in both their lives. A chapter filled with hope, healing, and an unexpected bond. The rich businessman who lived alone in his success and the young girl who had survived the streets had found something rare. They had found a reason to keep going. And they had found someone to walk beside. If you enjoyed this heart-touching story, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more emotional billionaire stories.